Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Get ready to ditch those language learning myths because today we're diving into the secret world of pronunciation.
And it might just change the way you think about learning a new language.
I'm so ready.
So, we're talking about the power of orthography.
Orthography.
It's just a fancy way of saying spelling systems.
Okay, that makes more sense.
But it's more than just letters and sounds. It's about how our brains try to connect those sounds to the written word, even when we don't realize it.
So you're telling me there's a reason why some words just never seem to sound the way they're spelled?
Absolutely.
Like night with a K at the beginning. Who decided that?
Right, and those little spelling quirks can actually make it harder to learn a new language.
Really?
Yeah, there's this fascinating study in Frontiers in Communication where researchers analyzed the speech of ESL students in an intensive program.
So they were basically immersed in the language.
Exactly. Immersion is often seen as the key to fluency.
Makes sense, you're surrounded by it all the time.
Right, and the study showed how powerful it can be. But here's the catch.
What's that?
Even though those students made amazing progress, their pronunciation sometimes stumbled, especially those who were already at higher proficiency levels.
So the more advanced they were, the more they stumbled. How does that happen?
It's like their brains were working overtime trying to reconcile those spoken sounds with the spelling patterns from their native language.
So even when you're surrounded by the language, your brain is holding on to those old rulebooks.
Oh, exactly.
It's like trying to learn a new dance move when your feet are stuck in the rhythm of the old one.
That's a great analogy.
I try.
So how do we break free from those old rhythms?
Well, that's where this review article in language teaching comes in. It argues that we've underestimated just how important orthography is when it comes to learning a new language. It's not just about mimicking sounds.
It's about how our brains decode those sounds through the lens of written language.
You've got it.
But give me an example. How does this actually play out in the real world? Okay, think about Italian speakers who are learning English.
Okay.
Bassetti and Atkinson, they did this really cool study where they found that these learners were more likely to pronounce the silent B in det.
The B is silent.
Exactly. But only when they were reading the word aloud.
Oh, interesting. So when they heard the word spoken, they didn't pronounce the B.
Right. But when they saw it written down...
Your brain was like, hold on, that B has got to be there for a reason.
Precisely.
So our previous knowledge of spelling can actually create these phantom sounds in our second language.
Yes.
Wow. So it's not always a good thing to rely on what we see written down.
Well, it's not that simple. It's more like...
A double-edged sword.
Exactly. And it can get even weirder. Have you ever heard of the McGurk effect?
The McGurk effect. Okay, you're going to have to explain that one.
So picture this.
Yeah.
You're watching a video, right? And someone on screen is saying, bah.
Okay, I'm with you.
But here's the thing. The video's dubbed, so their lips are actually making the shape of fa.
Wait, so I'm hearing ba, but seeing fa. My brain would be so confused.
Exactly. And that's the McGurk effect in action. It shows how what we see can actually overpower what we hear.
You're blowing my mind here. So you're saying that our brains try to make sense of those mixed signals.
Right. They blend those sensory inputs and we end up hearing something totally different, like da.
Whoa, that's wild. But how does that relate to, like, learning Spanish or something?
Well, Rafat and Stevenson, they did this study where they found that when English speakers saw the Spanish letters L while hearing the correct pronunciation, which is kind of like a Y sound,
Right.
they often ended up combining those sounds, creating this new sound in their minds.
You mean just from seeing the letters L?
Exactly. It's like those letters have the power to override what we know to be the correct pronunciation.
It's like our brain is a rebellious student refusing to follow the rules.
Haha, I like that. But on a serious note, the good news is that simply knowing about these orthographic effects can actually help us become better language learners.
Okay, so how do we use this to our advantage? Are we doomed to mispronounce L forever?
Not at all. The key is to be more aware of how our brain processes language. We need to think of pronunciation and spelling as two separate systems.
Two separate systems that we need to learn and then, integrate?
Exactly. And that's where techniques like shadowing come in, where you listen and repeat right after a native speaker.
So it's like training your ear and your tongue to work together, even when those letters are trying to mess with you.
Precisely. And it goes beyond just memorizing words.
You mean it's about understanding the why behind the what?
You got it. Why does this word sound different from how it's spelled? What are the rules?
It's like cracking a code.
And Rafat and Perry, they actually suggest that language teachers introduce the pronunciation of new words before showing students how to spell them, especially when the sounds are really different.
Oh, that makes so much sense. It's like learning to dance. You wouldn't want to just look at a diagram of the steps, would you? You'd want to feel the rhythm first.
Exactly. Establish that connection with the sound first, then bring in the spelling later.
So we've talked about how our brains try to make sense of new languages, like clinging to familiar spelling patterns. But how does this actually work with specific sounds?
Well, let's circle back to that Spanish L we talked about.
Oh yeah, the one that messes with everyone.
For English speakers, seeing those two L's side by side, it just screams all sound, right?
Totally. It's like two L's, double the O
Yeah.
sound.
Exactly. But in a lot of Spanish dialects, it's more like a Y sound, like in tale.
Right. It's like our brain gets stuck in this pronunciation rut, expecting one thing and getting something totally different.
And these kinds of curveballs where the letters don't quite match the sound, they happen all the time.
Give me another example. I'm ready for more brain-bending linguistics.
All right, how about the English H?
Okay. Pretty straightforward sound.
But in Spanish, it can be silent.
Silent H. You mean like in hola?
Yes. You see that H sitting there, and you just want to pronounce it.
It's true. It feels almost wrong not to apply.
And it can really trip up Spanish learners.
Because they see the H and their brain just goes on autopilot.
Exactly. Adding a sound that shouldn't even be there.
It's like a constant tug of war between your eyes and your ears.
That's a great way to put it. No wonder language learning can feel like such a roller coaster sometimes.
Right. But that's why I love these deep dives.
Me too.
Because once you understand these little quirks, these orthographic effects, it's like you're unlocking a secret level of language learning.
Absolutely. You're not just repeating sounds, you're understanding the why behind them.
So instead of getting frustrated, you can be like, aha, I see what you're doing there, brain.
Exactly. You're one step ahead.
It's like leveling up your language game.
Yeah.
So, as we wrap up, what's our big takeaway for all the language lovers out there? What have we learned today?
Be kind to your brain. It's working hard to make sense of all these new sounds and symbols.
It's true. Learning a new language is no joke.
Don't get discouraged by those tricky spellings and pronunciations.
Embrace the challenge. Right?
Exactly. Have fun with it.
I love that. Because at the end of the day, learning a new language is all about connecting with other people, experiencing new cultures.
It opens up a whole new world of possibilities.
And who doesn't love exploring new worlds? That's all the time we have for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time for another linguistic adventure.